are you doing today, this evening? It's not morning. We're glad that you are here and joining us today. As we get started, first off, if you see a little bit of smoke coming in, nothing is on fire. Everything is just fine. Junior high is just having a super great time down in the vault, and this fog machine is just making its way upstairs. So no need to panic. Everything is good there. We are thankful that you joined us for night 2 of our Courageous Conversations, and we're going to have a great time and looking forward to learning, thinking, being challenged, and growing together. Quickly, before we jump in and start, on your table is a connection card. And we'd love for you, if you would like weekly resources from our ministries, you can click that little tick that little box. We have also talked as a team, putting together some resources that fit within the 3 conversations that we're having, very specific to those topics. And so we'll be emailing that out after next week. So if you would like some information on that, please click that little box too. So fill this out for us. You can just leave it on your table. We'll grab it afterwards. But let's open in prayer. Father God, we come before you, and we're so thankful that we can come together and we can stare at one another in each other's eyes, and we can be courageous in our vulnerability and our authenticity to one another about where we are as parents and some things that we're worried about. And just like we've been talking on Sunday mornings, we don't want to live in the home of the afraid, but instead we want to be parents that live in a home of the brave. And so would you help us tonight to be that, to make that transition from not sitting in fear, but operating out of love and trust in you. So Lord, thanks for tonight. Be with us. Holy Spirit, would you convict us in areas that we need conviction? Would you encourage us in our areas of weakness? And would you heal maybe some painful moments that we've experienced around this topic? Because you are a good, good God, and you want nothing more than your children to be whole and walk in freedom. So we're thankful that we can have this conversation tonight, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, again, we are so glad you're here, and I don't want to take any more time. I would like to introduce you to Dr. Jim Burns. Come on up.
Okay. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, I mean, should I go through all who
No.
you are?
No. I want all 20 minutes. Your
okay,
speakers,
perfect.
when they say 20 minutes, my intro is usually 20 minutes. You know what? I am here to talk about sexuality, but not in the way that I usually do. I've actually preached at this church on sexuality, and I didn't talk about any of this, hardly the stuff that I'm going to bring up, because we're going to talk about gender identity issues, okay? Now, I'm going to guarantee you that almost all of you are going to not agree with everything I say. In fact, I would be shocked if somebody just went, I totally agree with you, Jim. And remember that I'm coming from afar, so if you have any problems, just write letters to John Dix and tell him. And honestly, I'm going to give you my opinion of things, okay? And what I'm most looking forward to is not listening to me speak. People learn best when they talk, not when the speaker speaks. And so I love this conversation thing. When John texted me and then I have connected with Amber, it just seemed to me the right thing to do is to kind of get things started. But a lot of us have a lot of questions. We have a lot of issues. We have a lot of concerns. And we do, especially in the area of gender identity issues. So you're not going to get the full Monty on sex and sex education. You're going to simply get more stuff on identity, but you're going to see me meddle a little bit in your life and actually in the church's life too. And so what a privilege to be able to have this. I honestly count it as a privilege. So pretty much the whole question I'm going to talk about today is, how did we get here? I mean, you could be conservative and the most conservative person in here, and you could be a liberal, the most liberal person here, and you're still going to ask that same question, how on earth did we get here? Because the world has changed, no doubt the world has changed. So I want to ask you a question that I actually have asked at this church before, but I want you to watch the answer. How many of you received good, positive, healthy sex education from your parents when you were growing up? I want you to put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was one over there, right? Okay. The expert right over there. There you go, 6. So 6, so that means the vast majority of us never received good, positive, healthy sex education from our parents. The fascinating side to that is all studies, liberal and conservative, Planned Parenthood speaks this just like the biblical church speaks this, that the more positive, value-centered sex education kids receive from home, the less promiscuous, and listen to this, the less confused they'll be. Got it? The less confused they'll be. I don't know about you, and I don't know what the age of your kids are, but I'm going to say that if your kids are at age 5, 6, 7, and they're beginning to wonder things, or they're adults, they all have some confusion going on because there's so much stuff being thrown at them from media, from their peers. Peer influence is huge right now. The culture is, well, we'll talk about it in a minute. Now, how did we get here? Well, part of the reason we got here is because I'm going to blame our parents. Isn't that the thing you always do? You blame your parents? So I'm going to blame the previous generation that never really talked to us about it, because the truth is we probably haven't done as effective a job as we could to do the job to help kids be less confused, right? Now, again, we can blame culture, and you're not going to hear me whine as much about the culture as a lot of people think. But we weren't proactive when others were. Now, I'm going to probably offend you with a video right now, and this is a video that's all over YouTube. It's been seen millions of times, and it's by the Gay Men's Chorus in San Francisco. Now, I'm not putting this down because actually they have an agenda, and they're going to show you in kind of a smug way in 2.5 minutes. It's a 4-minute video, but in 2.5 minutes with a song, they're going to show you what they think, and we'll talk about this later. Let's go ahead and show this.
As we celebrate Pride on the progress we've made over these past years, there's still work to be done. So to those of you out there who are still working against equal rights, we have a message for you. You think we're sinful? You fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. You can keep them from disco, warn about San Francisco. Make him wear pleated pants, we don't care. We'll convert your children. We'll make them tolerant and fair.
At first I didn't get why you'd be so scared of us turning your children into accepting, caring people, but I see now why you'd have a problem with that.
Just like you worried, they'll change their group of friends. You won't approve of where they go at night to protests. Oh, and you'll be disgusted so gross when they start finding things online that you've kept far from their sight, like information. Guess what? You'll still be alright. We'll convert your children, yes we will.
Reaching one and all, there's really no escaping it.
'Cause even grandma likes RuPaul.
And the world's getting kinder.
Gen Z's gayer than Grindr. Learn to love, learn to vogue, face your fate. We'll convert your children. Someone's gotta teach them not to hate. We're coming for them.
What do you think? Go ahead, talk to me. I know we're going to do Q&A later, but talk to me. What's your first thought of this?
Is that for real?
It's for real. Oh, and go on YouTube and you can watch the whole thing. He's a little smug, but he actually taught us a lot, I think, in that little short time. Not just him, but it's the Gay Men's Choir at San Francisco. Amazing results. I've never shown this before in my life, and at 4:45 is when I called Amber and said, hey, let's play this. Your reaction is amazing. You can't even... Anybody want to comment? Yeah.
No, I think it's scary because I see that happening. It's
Yeah.
on TV, it's everywhere.
Right.
It's just,
Was there much about being gay? No. What was the word?
kindness.
Kind and tolerant. Okay, kind and tolerant. And one of the things I'm going to tell you in a moment is I'm going to say this generation, Gen Z, your younger kids, millennials if you have a little bit older kids, they view loving as a form of tolerance. They view tolerance as a form of loving. And they don't believe that we as parents can be loving and tolerant. Those of us who have a biblical worldview, when you have the Bible, Jesus was loving to prostitutes, but he also didn't agree with what they were doing, see? So we got some complication here going, okay? So what I want to do is I want to give you the purity code, and the reason I want to give this to you at the beginning is because it's where I think we want to go and teach our kids. This is from the Bible. The words are not exactly from the Bible, except the bottom words, but the first words are, and this is my hope for those junior hires who are burning the room on fire right now. In honor of God, my family, and my future spouse, I commit to sexual purity. And even the word purity, those guys hate the word purity and they burn us for using the word purity, but you could use sexual integrity too. Because all generations, but there's a lot of lack of sexual integrity, but in honor of God. So God gets some credit here. He's not the great killjoy. He's not the bad guy. Some crowds turn him into the bad guy. My family. Most kids don't totally know what their family believes. Now, maybe you're gonna do better than your of the 6 of you who had parents who did this. But a lot of kids don't know what the family believes, or they just got silence, or don't do it because it's dirty, rotten, horrible. So save that dirty, rotten, horrible thing until you're married, and then it's going to be great. What? So they're getting mixed messages. Weird tapes. Some of you have weird tapes. I have some weird tapes. And then your future spouse. So even when your kids are young, you want to begin teaching them about that future spouse up there, okay? Now, we do it 4 ways, and these are all biblical, by the way, and they come from the Scripture, directly from the Scripture. So we honor God with our body, okay? That is found in, if you want biblical notices there, it's all over the Bible, but 1 Corinthians 6:20 says honor God with your body. The second one says renew your mind for good. And this is what's happening today is their mind, we think about the mind as maybe lust or masturbation or things like that, but actually that is the mind, but the mind is also what's being put into our heads, what's being put into our kids' heads from a culture that is not Christian. And we can't expect them to be Christian. You think all that's going to change? No, it's not going to change tomorrow, see? And so we renew our mind for good. That's Romans 12:1 and 2. The next one says, turn your eyes from worthless things. That's directly out of the Scripture. It's found in Psalm 139, a very famous psalm. Turn your eyes from worthless things. So we have to teach our kids the discipline. Paul said to Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. And he used a term, discipline, which was actually an athletic term. So we're to be people who teach our kids to discipline. So we've got to teach our kids to discipline by turning their eyes from worthless things. Or like I used to teach my girls that guys looked at skin, and they'd go, Dad, that's gross. Well, guys do look at skin. Not all guys are bad, but I'm just telling you that sometimes even what you wear, you got to be careful with that. And with guys, teaching them to bounce their eyes and all that. I'm not spending time on the positive side of teaching that because I want to go into some of the other things. And then the last one is guard your heart. And this is really what we need to be thinking about when I present for, 15 more minutes or whatever. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. That's what the Bible says. It's in Proverbs. And in that scripture, you could do a whole talk on that. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. It's found in Proverbs 4:23. So what we're going to do in this short time period, and then you're going to learn most when we do the kind of either the Q&A or, believe me, I don't want to just be the authority on this. I want you to be able to talk amongst yourselves as well as talk as well. But we're going to look at gender identity, your kids, and the culture. Okay. Now again, I could bag on the culture, but I'm not going to spend too much bagging on the culture, but I just want to remind you by even showing that video that the things, they are a-changin'. That was actually Bob Dylan from a long time ago, but believe me, it's changed unbelievably a lot in the last 5 years. So your kids, what they're hearing and what they're growing up, I've got grandkids, I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and I think about what they're going to grow up into. Their mom is a teacher in the Santa Ana School District, and what they're being asked to teach, which she chooses not to, but what they're being asked to teach is kind of crazy. Okay, so the world is changing. Culture has changed. I call it, well, what I want to say is we have to be students of the culture, so that's why I've got to spend a little bit of time on it. And I call it the cringe factor for almost every one of us in this room, maybe all of you, the reaction of the video. It's the cringe factor. The cringe factor is that 75% of kids who go to this church quite possibly are going to cohabitate because that's what the statistic says. When Jimmy Burns went to Anaheim High School in the shadows of Disneyland, 74% of the culture not Christians, but the secular culture said that they would not live with someone before instead of marriage. Pornography, the average kid will see pornography at age 11. It's skewing downward for boys. It's skewing downward for girls. Girls are actually right at the top of the 11, and boys are at 10 something, so that's why we say 11. I didn't say that some kids are going to see pornography. I said all kids will see pornography. At least that's what authorities tell us. That's the cringe factor. So if you aren't talking to your kids at a young age, then the first sex that they see, and I said see, not just their friends not just talking about it, but they see is on that thing called the cell phone. It's the greatest distributor of internet pornography. Gender identity has changed greatly. I've been speaking and writing on the area of sexuality for a long time, and I used to say 2% of the population was gay. Well, today, there are people even on the liberal side who say it's 2% who are probably gay, and then there's a whole gap that's confused. So at least 10%, and probably growing, are what we call gender identity confused. That doesn't mean they're gay, they're just confused. Okay, and this is where some of your questions came on, or at least where Amber talked to me about when we were talking about, do we use pronouns, do we not use pronouns, what do we say about the 7-year-old boy who wants to transition, things like that we'll get into, see. So it's confusing, but we have to be students of the culture that is the case. And also remember this, that with Gen Z, which is 22, 23 and down, twice as many atheists are in Gen Z as even in the millennials, okay? So that's pretty interesting. So if they're atheist or they don't have a biblical worldview, why would they think the way we think? And why would they think the way that their parents think if they haven't had their parents teach and train them, even on the spiritual side? See, again, we could spend all kinds of time on this. So David Kinnaman, who is a friend of mine, and he's the president of the Barna Company, wonderful Biola grad, he wrote a book that went unnoticed a number of years ago. It was called Unchristian. And what he did in the Barna Company, they study people, it's called study culture, and he asked people in the church and not in the church, young adults, and he actually included college students there, but he said, what's wrong with the church? Of the top 5 things, they all said the church is anti-gay. And there were people who then left the church because in their mind the church was anti-gay. Do you believe in the Bible? Yes. Do you believe in Jesus? Is he your Savior? Yes. But they also said when both the Christians and the non-Christians agreed that the church was anti-gay. Now, I rather doubt if there's been a whole lot of sermons here at the church on being anti-gay. See what I'm saying? But the fact is the view today, and it's gotten stronger. Kinnaman wrote that book some time ago. So what's changed? Okay, here's where I'll whine a little bit about the culture. 2007, there was, and not that long ago really, there was one pediatric gender clinic in the United States, 2007. One. Today, there are hundreds of pediatric gender clinics, and you would have to include Planned Parenthood as all pediatric clinics. They're not, they always have a doctor, they always have psychiatrists, on staff, and Kaiser. That's pushing you a little bit maybe. But a lot of Kaisers also have they'll pass out testosterone without parental time on the first visit. In the state of Washington, a 13-year-old can begin gender-affirming therapy with no parental consent. California as well, my friends. Did you hear that? It just took place. We missed it. It was not a big deal, but that's the case here too. Is it going to go back? I don't think it's going to go back. I mean, again, some of you who are more politically motivated than I am, you may think that, but again, everybody has their own opinion. We can talk about it if you want. In Oregon, a 15-year-old can get a double mastectomy without parental consent. I have one word: yikes. Yikes. My wife teaches a Bible study every Tuesday. She's done it for 13 years, and one of the gals has a granddaughter who is 6, and they're doing a transition with the granddaughter, and this grandma's like, wait, she's 6. But she says she wants to be a boy, so they're letting her be a boy. And they name, there's a different name for her and all that. They haven't done anything like any kind of hormone therapy, but that's what they plan to do. So the world is different than how you grew up and how Jimmy Burns grew up in Anaheim, California, see. And so again, it's a different world. 100-year history. So it's not like we haven't just studied this stuff, like just yesterday, but over a 100-year history, looking at gender dysphoria, which means some kind of a dysfunction with gender or gender confusion or whatever, with gender dysphoria, and gender dysphoria can be described in a large term or in a small term, but we're going to go with a small term for a minute, and that's called transgender. When that first started, it was almost all boys, and it was young boys. And these boys were feminine. These boys had some hormone issues. Truly, it was a very small percent, but it was boys who acted like girls, thought they were maybe going to be girls, and this was boys. All boys, no girls. Today, that's changed, and today, a majority are teen girls. So does that mean that physiologically things changed, or was it the culture that changed? Remember what changed? So those are some things that, as parents, what do? We got to be students of the culture. So it's complex, it's complicated, it's confusing for all. It's confusing for you, but it's also confusing for your kids. And if you think that just by saying, don't do it, or you're wrong, or those people are idiots, if you think that's going to help, it's, frankly, in my opinion, it's not. So what do you do if your child disagrees with your views or tells you that they are considering becoming gay, lesbian, bi, trans? Okay, maybe they want to change a pronoun, or they want to put their pronoun on their Facebook. Now, I realize some of you looking in this room, I know you have some younger kids too, and I'm absolutely freaked you out, I'm sure, by now. In fact, all of us are freaked out, period. We probably are. Well, first of all, I want to say you may disagree with them, but please have dialogue. Kids learn through dialogue. You learn through dialogue. And so you may disagree with me, but please have dialogue. Okay, so if I'm going to have dialogue with this fine woman, what's your name? Cecilia. If I'm going to have dialogue with Cecilia, if I immediately say to Cecilia, she says something, and I go, you're an idiot, that's so wrong, she's going to quit dialoguing with me. She's either going to get mad at me, or she's just going to close up. We as parents sometimes do that with our kids. And so again, is it possible to agree to disagree? Because what do kids do? What did you do when you were a young adolescent, or an adolescent when you're even an emerging adult? You changed your mind. So all this stuff, I wasn't a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 16. So I changed my mind on faith things big time, see? But we change our mind. So we have to be kind and loving in the midst of kind of agreeing to disagree. See, and that's not easy, and I know it's emotional, and we get all upset about that. So I think it's very important that we have dialogue with them, and we don't violently disagree. The odds are it's gender identity confusion, it's not gender dysphoria. Did you hear that? It's really important that you get that somebody can have gender identity confusion. You want to know, why do they have that? Deal with that, think through that, but it's not just necessarily dysphoria. It's probably not dysphoria, and again, that's where you go to people who are trusted, and you have some conversations with them. I think we have to show, not just teach them, that God loves all of us who are broken people, and that God loves broken people. So I'll give you an illustration. You may not like this illustration. So we have a family member who's gay, and he's in the extension side, but he moves down in Southern California. I live in Dana Point, and he moved down to Capo Beach, and he has a boyfriend, and his boyfriend's name, we're going to call him George. So George comes over to our house, and he is, more the flaming type gay person. And George is just hilarious, and he's fun, and he's a character, and just a character. And so we were talking about birthdays, because I think it was my wife's mom has now passed away, but it was her birthday. And so I said, George, what do you do on your birthday? And he goes, really serious. He goes, I'm 42 years old. I can't remember ever having a birthday party. I'm from a Puerto Rican family in New York. We didn't have money. We didn't do birthdays. So they leave, and I say to my kids, do you want to have a birthday party for George? Now, again, my theological position I believe that it's very clear in the Bible. It's not even questionable. It's very clear in the Bible that a man marries a woman. So George already is not in my line of thinking. But I said to my kids, should we have a birthday party for George? And they're like, yeah, these are, emerging adult types. And they're going, sure, let's do it. Kathy's a little bit reticent, but she goes, okay. So I call George up, and I say, hey, George, why don't you come over for dinner? Bring so-and-so, who's the relative. And can you do it on what day? Blank. Okay. So George shows up at the door, and I am wearing a party hat with bald guys look terrible anyway with this, but it's like a pointed party hat, and I have the little thing, and I go, and we come out, and we sing happy birthday to George. George starts crying. because he's never had anybody sing happy birthday to him before. So then we usher him in, and there's presents. Some of them are goofy. One kind of a nice present that Kathy bought, but we bought some fun, goofy presents. He has a fun personality. We have dinner, and then we bring out the cake, and we sing happy birthday. He's sitting next to me, and he goes, Jim, during the song, he goes, I thought you guys were Christian. I said, we are. He goes, oh. Well, when Christmas Eve came around, guess who was willing to come to Christmas Eve service? Now, he came drunk. That was a problem. But he did come to the, and he's singing. And all of a sudden, I said, George, you know some of these songs. He goes, oh, yeah, I grew up. See. So I wish I could say at the end, now he works for Billy Graham, and he doesn't. In fact, they broke up, which is the typical thing in a gay relationship. They broke up, and, I don't know where George is. But I do want to tell you that I think we did it right for a couple of reasons. One, we showed George love. We didn't tell him that we agreed with his lifestyle. Two, my kids who struggle with this issue, because they're in that world, and they grew up in the church, and they know what we believe, and on, they saw us love a guy who they knew we kind of probably disagreed with his world. Not probably, we did disagree. Grieve that a generation of people are forfeiting their spiritual purpose. See, for me, I can separate the fact that there's a guy here who's gay, or they want me to say they, I'll talk about that in a minute, or they call him, with some different pronoun. I can grieve that, but I can still treat that person as a God, one of God's children, and I realize that they're forfeiting their spiritual purpose, because I think we were meant for a spiritual purpose. And I don't think when we're going in that direction that we're living out by that spiritual purpose, but I think we can still love those people, I guess. As a parent, I don't think you can be a one-topic parent. So let's say that your daughter or son disagrees with you, or they're at a bad age, or they actually put on their Facebook, I'm bi, or whatever it might be, and you're wanting to freak out. So that can't be the only discussion that you have for them, because there are other issues. So again, I always say to people, do they know what you believe? Yes. Do they know how you feel? Yes. Now, broaden it out and still love the children. Because shunning doesn't work. Now, again, you have three options. One is to shun your own kids. I haven't seen a whole lot of kids come back at that time. Two, you can kind of be in the mushy middle. Three, you can just say, I'm going to bag the whole thing too, and I'm going to agree with you. And I don't go with any of those. It's the mushy middle. And it's hard. It's messy there. I have a friend who, daughter actually married a woman. She was 21 and married a woman who was 42. And he was on staff at a small little church called Saddleback Church in Orange County where I live. And he said, should I go there? I go, I'd go. I don't know what you do, but I would go. The reason I'd go is because 21-year-olds don't do well with 42-year-olds, even if it was a, heterosexual marriage. So when she crashes, where's she going to go? If you shun, she's not going to come to you. 3 months. Dad, can I come back? I'm really having struggle, and we're having some, physical abuse that's going on and all those kind of things. So today she's in Celebrate Recovery. She actually has a boyfriend. She has some baggage. What do we do? See. So again, you can't be a one-topic parent. It's not easy. It's complicated. And then I just want to say it's probably gender confusion. I don't know if I made it up there or not. It's probably gender confusion. Well, it's not in there. Don't be a one-topic parent. It's probably gender confusion. So when you begin to deal with gender confusion, that's a different thing. I can help people think through some of that. I can't tell them, well, you're gender confused, because they may not be. See, but it's probably gender confusion. And where that gets in is, and we'll talk about this more in questions, I'm sure, but with pronouns. So with somebody who's gender confused and they say, I am not he anymore, I am they. Okay, I'm not going to call them they, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call them by their first name. So you never have to use that. So let's say you need to, call me by my pronoun. Okay, David. Okay, Susan. It doesn't sound good with English sometimes when instead of saying he or she, we would say their name. So what? Do it anyway. Now again, there's more complications to that than that. Now you'll have to decide what your kids do with social media if they're blasting something out, because they're probably gender confused. let me say this, and I want to make sure I'm looking at the clock here. I need to stop. But let me say this. What we don't understand is heterosexuals. And again, there's probably somebody in here who's totally disagreeing with me, and I respect you like crazy. But if a 14-year-old girl and another 14-year-old girl kiss or fondle, that's the same feeling when you were 14 and you kissed a boy or you kissed a girl, if you were a boy. We miss that because I'm a, raving heterosexual. I'm not, none of the men in here have to worry about me. But the fact is if I was 14 and I kissed you, and because the culture says it's okay, I would have some of those same feelings. It's important for parents to understand that's just causing and moving me toward confusion. It's not moving me to be gay. It could take me in that direction, but that's even still gender confusion. Okay? And anyway, there you go. Again, I'm not looking to build some kind of a big talk on it. And then the last one is just, no, teach healthy, God-honoring sexuality. And what I like to say, it's not this, honey, it's this. So what we've missed the mark is we'll go, no, it's not this, and then we burn on all what's going on, but we need to go, for us, our family, it's not this, it's this, and here's why. And then build a theology of healthy sexuality. We love Uncle Mike. We don't agree with him necessarily. In our family, we believe this, but you've got to talk to your kids about sex. What was it? The more positive, value-centered sex education kids receive from home, the less promiscuous and less confused they'll be. Well, wasn't that a fun evening to come to? Okay? So that's my talk, okay? So again, I didn't close it off. I have struggled, but when these guys ask me to do this, I'm like, wait, I speak on this subject, and I've got a good opening, and I've got a good body, and I've got a good conclusion, and I have none of that for you. But that's because we need to talk. So let's talk. And again, feel free to disagree with me. I told you that, kids change their mind. Maybe I'll change my mind with what you have to say. Maybe you have something better than me.
So on your table is a text number. Please text in your questions, and we will talk about them this way. So I have one already.
Do you still like me?
I love you. Are you kidding? No, it's so good. And I think, from us in a ministry perspective, you don't realize maybe you don't realize how often we talk about these things, these conversations, and they're hard and they're messy and
it's I was speaking last week on confident parenting in Louisville, Kentucky on Saturday morning, did a marriage conference Friday night, and we never brought this up, and the lineup was either for some reason pornography or gender identity stuff. Yeah. You know this as somebody in ministry. Yeah. I get it every week.
Okay, here's your first one. Ready? Get your bat ready. What do I do? What do I tell my 13-year-old that is believing the lie? She asks about salvation if her friends or her choose to live the lie of LGBT.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And all of you are going to get that question at one time if your kids are 13. Not everybody, but most. And I think instead of going, no, they can't be a Christian, I think you just simply say, well, what do you think, first of all? And dialogue and respect what they have to say. And respect, even if you disagree, and say, well, another view is this. But then you have to, I'll say on something like that, and I get that question asked all the time, I'll say, well, I'm not God. And, Jesus was loving some sinners, big time. And so I'm not convinced that somebody who has missed the mark, by the way, is literally what the word to sin means, who's missed the mark in one thing doesn't mean that they can't still embrace Jesus as Savior. But again, it's kind of above my pay grade. I think it's not the right question to be asking. Is this person possibly, by living this kind of a lifestyle, forfeiting their spiritual purpose? And I'm not as concerned. I am concerned. I'm deeply concerned about the kid who's, living that. But I'm more concerned about my own kid who's that 13-year-old, helping them kind of think through things, because I know how I respond is going to be very important to their spiritual life and their spiritual depth. So I'm willing to have a longer dialogue rather than just shut it with an opinion. So I think it's a greater challenge for us not to come up with a theological point right on the matter. Now, again, you can say, well, why don't we investigate what the Bible says? And don't just start where the Bible says, homosexuality is a sin, because it is in the Bible, okay? But start more about how do we love people, how do we do some of these other things. So you're building it on a love basis. That's my opinion. Now, some people, I realize, are going to disagree.
It's good. What is the best way to talk to kids under 10 years old about homosexuality? Yeah. What's an appropriate age to address that?
Yeah, it's a good question. 10 is kind of the chain where what we say is you begin talking about sex ed at ages 3 to 5. And it's God made your body, God made boys, God made girls. God made boys and they're going to become daddies. God made girls and they're going to become mommies. See what I'm doing? I'm not talking about homosexuality, but I'm teaching them that. Every little boy has a penis. Yeah, we said the word. Every little girl has a vagina, and we're teaching them. Why are we doing that 3 to 5? So that they'll be comfortable at 6 to 9 when they start asking you a million questions. Anybody in here have 6 to 9-year-olds? Okay, well, yeah. Well, then you know. I mean, what do? They ask you a million questions. And some of the questions are goofy, and some of them are amazing, but they ask you questions. So you, at 3 to 5, you're building trust in a safe place. Because my parents, since they never talked to me about sex, I was never going to ask them a question. I had questions, but I wasn't willing to ask my parents. So at 6 to 9, you answer the questions just like you would a 6 to 9-year-old, not older. But that 10 is the mark. You know why 10 is the magic mark? What did I say they'd see pornography? So today they're seeing pornography at age 11. Okay? So at age 10, then you begin talking through the issues of sexual systems, but spend much more time on the positive side. God created your body. God sees it as good. God created man. The Bible says, Jesus said it, man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife. That's actually kind of sexual, be united. In sexual intercourse, uniting. And the two will become one flesh. So you're teaching all this stuff. It gives them a better foundation. So at 10, I didn't answer the question yet, right? So at 10, you can say, well, there are people who believe that, but here's what we believe. And at 10, they may question you because they're getting it already, but they also may not question you. Here's what we believe, and here's why. So I say at age 10, we make sure that we're building, I used a phrase, I just threw it out, a theology of healthy sexuality. Theology is the study of God. So what does the Bible say? The Bible does talk about sexuality a lot, and it's not just don't do it. There's beautiful things. I just gave a talk, I'm giving a talk tomorrow morning to a group of women on creating an intimate marriage, and I'm talking about the Song of Songs, Song of Solomon. Man, it's kind of like, talk about R-rated, wow. Okay, so the point that I'm saying is the Bible does speak a lot about sex. And it's not all just, God's gonna get you type things. He wants the best for you. So you're teaching a 10-year-old, well, God says don't, flee from sexual immorality. And some of us think that homosexuality is not the moral way to do it because here's what the Bible says, and you begin teaching them. Now, for a lot of us, we got to learn this stuff. So the good news is you're going to have a bunch of resources, you said. So there used to be things, it was hard. There weren't resources. Today there are. Even resources that aren't necessarily mine, but resources on homosexuality and stuff. I'll make sure you check in with me and I'll send you some things that are teaching you how to say that to a 10-year-old. Because you don't say the same thing to a 10-year-old that you have dialogue with a 16-year-old. And we make a mistake because since we don't know what to do, we kind of panic and we go to the 10-year-old. We've been talking to him like a 10-year-old, and all of a sudden now we're talking to him like a 16 or a 17-year-old. That doesn't work.
I'm being real honest. I'm overwhelmed by these questions. They're so heavy and they make me want to cry, right. To be honest. Yeah. Sorry. Our pediatrician asks my daughter all the time because of her depression, do you identify as a boy or a girl? Because she says she doesn't like her body. Is that against the law?
Right. Is it against the law for the pediatrician to do that? No, I think that's actually a really good thing that your pediatrician is doing. You may disagree with me. But if you have a daughter who's depressed and she doesn't like her body, it's a body image issue. Now I'm not talking about homosexuality, lesbianism, any of that kind of stuff. A lot of girls who are depressed because they have a body image issue. Half of you women have had body image issues, right? So when they're asking that, is the issue? We're trying to get down to the issue. What's the primary issue? It's probably not lesbianism or whatever, but it could be. So let's say that she's had an experience, your daughter has. I doubt if she has. It probably is literally body image issues. But if she came and said, well, I just am so depressed because, I was kissing this girl or something, well, then you want to work with it there. So I don't mind the pediatrician doing that. Now, I would mind if the pediatrician went further and said, celebrate your, lesbianism or something. I would probably change pediatricians on that one. But I don't see that as bad, as much. Now, again, you may disagree with that because it's your daughter and it's, But if a pediatrician would have said, I have 3 daughters, if a pediatrician would have said that to my daughter in this generation, I don't know that she was going just for I don't think a pediatrician is always going just for how do you identify issue as much as why are you depressed? And today, take COVID because it's increased. Teen depression is, and I realize your daughter's not a teen, but she's preteen. But teen depression is on the rise like crazy, and you've got to get to some of the answers on why are they depressed. Is it physiological? Is it hormonal? Is this young girl going through her period at an earlier time? Whatever it might be. But you got to ask all those questions. That's how you do it. She's doing an assessment.
But that's not how they address it. You take it to a pediatrician, and the psychologists these days, they'll lose their license if they don't affirm what that child is thinking.
Yeah. Well.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
So she's saying that that's not how a lot of pediatricians approach it. And psychologists, they can lose their license if they don't affirm the decision. So.
Only partially true. I agree with you. You and I might just disagree a little bit. No, I understand. Oh, I didn't know what's happening. And I would suggest strongly that if you're having somebody do that, then for goodness sakes, don't go to that psychologist, don't go to that pediatrician, because I know some awesome pediatricians and some awesome psychologists who are not going to go that far, right? So, but my point being is when you do an assessment today, the questions you ask are different than when I was trained. I went to Princeton where I got my counseling degree in 1977. So we were never taught, and my specialty is adolescence. Did my PhD in that. We were never taught to assess the way these people are assessing today. I totally agree with you on that. The state, in my humble opinion, they should just not be talking through that kind of stuff. Totally agree with that. However, there are a whole lot of people who are asking sometimes a question that would make us feel uncomfortable if they didn't take it to that same limit. So I would just simply say yes. Are there people who are going in that limit? Of course they are, and they're going to blame the state for doing that. There's also people who are asking that question truly because they want to try to help that kid. I want to go for those people. This is where we have to be careful. We have to be very careful who we put our kids in front of, especially when it comes to the medical, psychological world, okay? So don't think, and I'm not saying this with you at all, and then I'll let you say something, I know. But don't think that everybody thinks the same or even practices the same. So find people who are more like-minded with you. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't. Let's say you have to go to a counselor at the school because of some kind of issue or finances or things like that. I totally get that, that's hard. But by and large, we can kind of choose where we're going to take our kids, okay? And sometimes we have to ask questions that we never thought about. Kathy and I never thought of asking questions to our pediatricians, of questions that we would now ask our pediatricians, okay? So when our grandchildren came along and we knew a person who was a Christian pediatrician who is mandated by the state for certain things too, but we trusted them because we trusted their faith, and they're a great pediatrician. So we urged Christy to go to this pediatrician. See, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about it because you and I can talk after.
Yeah,
but do.
But you know what, too? And I just want to mention this. When we had this conversation, okay, I was asked to leave the room. The child was
Yeah.
Yeah.
assessed.
Yeah.
And when I came back in, I was told that she needed a psychologist and a psychiatrist, which to me, medication. And I said, why? Patient privilege, couldn't say, they were over 14.
Yeah, that's amazing to me, and I know that happens, and I get it. So, but here's the deal. So it did burn you, and I'm so sorry. I would just want to give you this hug. At the same time, what I want to say is, in an hour, somebody did an assessment for you and they pulled you out and whatnot, or less than an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So,
Yeah,
let's-
well, you are for that hour, and that was a powerful conversation. So let's give it more than an hour. You are raising this child, so there are other options. So they're going to get those. So the point being, obviously, I wouldn't send her back to that person,
Right.
and you're not going to. So look at it as a really tough situation that has the potential of being a learning experience. And I'm not oversimplifying this because I get what you just got. You just got slapped in the
Yeah.
face. So an hour influence is not half as important as 24/7, 365. Even though for that moment, especially I think you said 14. So 14 is just a tough age, period. So at 14, it's longer than the hour, but again, she could change her mind. So you're still protecting at age 14, so get her in another situation. And maybe she does need a psychologist, so fine, take her to a good psychologist who isn't going to be some kind of wackadoo who this person might send you to. But again, my heart goes to you.
Okay. I understand so in the room we have parents, grandparents, connect group leaders of high school ministry. So we have a huge conglomeration here. I understand we have a choice to call students, kids by their names rather than their preferred pronouns.
Yeah.
But what if they ask to be called a different name, different than their sex?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a tough one. You'll have to decide what to do on that. I spoke to a youth worker the other day who said that, a kid who was kind of one of the real leaders in the group about 2 years ago hadn't seen him for a while, came back and wanted the name change. What do they do? And I don't think there's an easy answer. I think you have to decide if now as a parent, you can choose what you're going to choose. If you're a youth group leader or a small group leader or whatever it might be, you may really need the discernment of somebody else and to say, you know what, this is new and hard for me. So if I slip up or whatever, and then, I want to affirm you as a person because God loves you and he affirms you, but you just got to know, just as hard as it probably is for you to ask me to call you, Kellyanne now instead of, George, it's really hard for me. So you just got to know you're going to have some patience with me, and you just, I love you. I want to spend time with you. I want you to be a part of this, but just know that for me it's going to be tough, and I'm not sure what to do. I just need some time. Now again, that you may look at that as a cop-out, and if it is, it is. For me, I want that kid, because I think that kid has gender identity confusion, not gender identity dysphoria. So with gender identity confusion, maybe today they're Kellyanne, but they may change their mind back. So I want them, if they crash, to know that I still love and care for them. Now again, that's not the dominant conservative, what I believe about the Bible. Some of my friends, I have the same view as them. That sounds a little bit more liberal probably with them, because some of my friends wouldn't do that. I have a very good friend who's a radio guy. Most of you would know his name. He totally disagrees with me on this. And I'm on a show all the time, but he totally disagrees. He thinks you shun. I don't know that I do that.
My son had something happen at work a few weeks ago. Someone wants to be called they don't want their name to be recognized. He's very adamant. It's very uncomfortable for many people that work there. My son's like, if I feel that I call him what he wants to be called, I'm not okay with that. And I said, well, I forget people's names all the time, and I'm embarrassed to ask them again their name.
Yeah.
So I always, when you come up to someone, you just start talking.
Yeah.
If you just start talking,
Yeah.
you want to ask, oh, where's this, or do you want
Right.
help?
Right.
You don't have to
Right.
acknowledge. So
Yeah.
you're okay. He's probably going
Yeah.
to answer you, and don't let
Yeah.
him.
Well, I have a daughter who has a degree in marriage and family counseling, and she lives in New York, and she's now leading something called the Color Factory, which is a interactive museum with people who are all over the place in terms of, the people who work there are theys and she's and all kinds of funny things. And she said she's never once actually called them they or whatever, because she says their name, or she goes, hey, how are you doing? It's exactly what you said. Now, that isn't the answer to changing the world. It might be the answer in an uncomfortable situation.
And shows kindness. You're just
Yeah.
being kind.
Right. My daughter, Christy, who's an 8th grade teacher, has one kid who wants to be identified differently, and Christy just calls them, Christy's, they say that this kid said, you're my favorite teacher, and she never has once gone that direction. Confusing, I get it.
How do you handle an individual who proactively lives a gender-confused lifestyle that is an atheist versus an individual who also professes to be a
Right.
Christian and proactively
Right.
engages in gender confusion? Do you engage with them differently?
Sure you do.
Gay atheist versus gay Christian.
Yeah, right. I think you do. I don't know if you know the testimony of Joe Dallas. He is quite a spokesperson in the movement he was gay, he was a pastor in the Metropolitan Church, which is a gay church, and all of a sudden he realized he was either going to have to live this lifestyle that he was living, or he was going to have to live a biblical lifestyle. He still says that he has lust with men. He's married and has children. And he said it's still an issue, just like a man would have lust for women. He says it's a struggle. He said, but it can be overcome by the power of the Holy Spirit. So he needed Christians who loved him, who were asking him more about that. A person who's not a Christian, it's hard to say, hey, in the Bible it says. You can still say in the Bible, because even non-Christians respect the Bible at times. We think that they don't, but they kind of do, see. So I think it's okay, but I think you're going to treat them differently. By the way, that's biblical. The Bible says that we treat Christians who have kind of slid and strayed different than we treat not believers. So I would treat them differently. That still doesn't mean that I'm not going to act like I don't. They need to know what I believe. If they want to ask, we'll have dialogue with that. I'll just be unapologetically Christian and unapologetically biblical, but I'm still going to show love to them. And it puts them in disequilibrium. They're not used to that. What I'm sharing with you, they don't get this, because they're like, wait, you're supposed to hate me, and I thought all Christians hated. We don't.
Is there evidence that homeschooling is an effective tool to help kids navigate this area?
Well, it slows it down. So what happens, homeschooling, you're putting them a little bit in a bubble. That could be good. And again, with what's going on in our culture, we may have more homeschooling going on. I understand that. So it puts them in a bubble for a while, but my problem with homeschooling isn't the homeschooling, because I think it's a great form of education, just like I do with others. Only a few small percent are ever going to homeschool. But if you're homeschooling them, you still have to prepare them for adulthood, because a lot of times kids will graduate from high school and they've been homeschooled, and then they get blasted by the world and they change in like 10 minutes. So teach them to learn to discern, teach them to become responsible adults. Don't put them in a bubble where you can't teach them about media and things like that. Did you catch the thing on the video? We'll show them places in the internet that they hadn't seen before. Well, if you've been homeschooled and all of a sudden now you're looking at some internet pornography, you're like, whoa, where'd this come from? Did it slow it down? Fine, yeah, it's good. I don't mind homeschooling. Just don't bury yourself, and then just don't keep them away from other kids at youth group and things like that. We who are in youth ministry, we talk about you. Because why we talk about you is we go, man, we want those kids. They can help us, but you're sometimes going, well, we don't want them to be around those pagan kids. Those are the Christian kids who go to the public school. This is safer than the public school.
Only you can say those things.
I know.
If I said that, I'd get in trouble.
I know. Yeah, well, I'm leaving. See, you're here. Homeschooling is great. Christian school, private school, great. Public school is great. If you're going to put your kids in public school, you're going to have to put a lot more energy into it. Our kids went to Christian school through 8th grade, and then, boom, we said, we didn't even volunteer as much at the church, sorry, guys, because we said our ministry is this school. So, I'm like, I have a daughter who's on the cheerleading squad, and I am like one of the cheer dads who are, helping raise funds and all that. Well, guess what? Those people started coming to church because we were hanging out with them, okay? Fellowship of Christian Athletes meant in our house, just you put energy into that public school thing, because If any of you expect the public schools to teach Christian education, forget it. If any of you expect the public schools to teach your kids what the Bible says about sex, forget it. It's a public school. Don't expect that. It's your job, not the public school's job anyway. So we can get all mad at them. One of the reasons why they do this is because they're so desperate because kids are so messed up, and then their parents aren't talking to them about it. So talk to your kids about it. Use the public school as it's not this, honey. What we believe is this, and you teach them that theology of healthy sexuality.
Fantastic. What's a good way to handle a kids show that we've been watching and then bam, LGBTQ walks in? My kids are still young, but we have in the past turned off the show and simply told them that things that showed we didn't agree on and they're not appropriate. Should we explain why, or should we wait till they're a little bit older? My kids are an age range of 2 to 9.
2 to 9. I mean, really different age group. 2 is very, very different than 9. 9, I'd probably have that conversation. You have a couple of options. One is you turn off. You're in charge. You're the leader. You're the parent. Act like a parent. You're not their best friend. They're not going to go, hey, we really, we think it's really a good idea that you turned off this show. They're not going to do that. They're going to say, it's not fair. Why'd you turn off the show? We turn off the show because we're your parents. Okay? Act like a parent. Lead. But what I want to say is, 2 to 9, 2-year-old, they're going to forget that. 9-year-old, a little bit more. 9-year-old, you might have some dialogue. Your options are, don't watch the show. That's fine. You're in charge. The other option is watch the show, but you'd be right there, and there's this little thing called a clicker that us men love. And you put it on pause, and you say, what did you think about that? And you turn it into with a kid who's older, even 9, but you turned it into a learning. Yeah. Back in the way days of when our kids were in youth group, I let my kids watch MTV Awards, and it was like right at the time when Pink kissed so-and-so and whatever. But I had the clicker, and I'd go. It was like a long show, and then I'd say, "What do you guys think about that?" And we'd dialogue, and if they weren't willing to dialogue or they weren't willing to have me there, they didn't get to watch the show. So then our youth pastor the next year goes, "Can we bring some kids?" I go, "Only if the parents sign because it's gross, a lot of it." So I said, if the parents sign it, so the parents had to sign something they all knew, and they're like, "Oh, thank you so much for doing it." They should have been there. And so I had the best conversations with kids about that. What do you think about that phrase in that song? They go, we love that song. We've never heard that phrase. You can sing. Do you know the words to So we'd have really good dialogue. So what I was trying to teach them to do was learn to discern, because very soon they're going to get away to school. And I see this fine man has a AP sweatshirt, and I was telling Amber, I was sitting next to this. I went from, my wife it's a long story, but my wife was at City of Hope. So then she left, and I went to APU, and I was working on this talk. Some of you said you should work more. But I was working on this talk, and I said to Amber, the people right next to me, APU, this is where I went. I love this school. They were having the grossest conversation about stuff. And if they had any idea that, I'm sitting next to them going, So the point being is just they're going to have those kind of things. So you got to you want those kids to have already at least heard from you how to learn to discern. They're not going to all do it perfectly. This is the funny. I wish I could see your face. You could see your faces. You look like me talking about masturbation to junior hires right now. I'm just telling you that right now. Oh, gosh. And then I leave, and now these guys have to clean this up.
But you know what? This is so good.
Yeah.
This is so good because I didn't have this.
Yeah. As parents, we need this.
I grew up in a generation where don't have sex. Now you get married. It's wonderful. No conversation, no laying a foundation. And nobody, when I was parenting my littles, did they say, hey, here's how. So I'm loving it, and I appreciate it very much. My daughter says to me, what are you going to pray the gay out of me? How do I respond?
I want to pray Jesus into you. So I wouldn't even go with that. I wouldn't take it there. Kids, all of us, all of our kids will do things that get our goat or whatever. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. If you're going to pray the gay out of her, pray it in your own room silently. There's actually some biblical foundation for that. But I would just say, I want to pray with you. I love you. I'm not praying the gay out of you. I'm praying Jesus into you, and let you and Jesus have some dialogue about this. And then let's investigate it together. Actually, there's a book we should read about, really healthy sexuality. Let's look at it, and you're probably going to disagree with some of it. I might disagree with some of it, but let's have some dialogue. And now you're doing what I think you're called to do, and that's train them in sexuality. And, put kids in disequilibrium by having the conversation. But I wouldn't put them, on the just like now I'm identifying that they're gay, because they're probably not. So don't pray the gay away from them. Pray Jesus into them.
It's good. A peer at school asked my 10-year-old daughter if she was gay, and she said she was so mad. I asked her if she knew what gay meant, and she said, yeah, she was asking if I was a boy. I said, no, that's not what gay means. I want to give her a knowledgeable explanation, but without going into too much detail.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
See, I love that. You're doing, see, sex education doesn't happen when you buy my book and you go through it with a kid. I mean, it kind of does. It happens when you're having discussion. It's not a one-topic thing when you're having discussion. So they gave you the greatest opening. A girl at school said, are you gay? And I said this, and she doesn't even know what gay means, obviously, because she said, I'm a boy. So you say, let's investigate this. And at 10, what am I saying to you? It's now time. So you're going to talk about sexual systems, and you're going to talk about that. And so don't go into you don't have to go into huge detail, but, gay, a gay person is someone who's attracted to the same sex. And sometimes they kiss, and sometimes they fondle. I mean, it's not, a 10-year-old's not going to, unless your 10-year-old's totally precocious, and they're going to have the conversation anyway. But, they're not going to go into as huge a detail as you might think they are. Some of the weird stuff that goes with it, but they may not know. And so, and there are people who like that, but they're missing out on God's purpose for their life, because it's like with Dad and me, or Mom, we have a special relationship that's a heterosexual relationship, and we're trying to do it with, the way the Bible says. See what I'm saying? So you're just turning it on them. And you're not even burning on the girl who's asking if they were gay. See?
So good. How do you determine the difference between a girl that is a tomboy, because she likes boy stuff, it's more fun, and clothes are more comfortable, versus gender confusion?
Yeah. Well, part of it is, embrace some of the tomboyism. If they play sports, let them play sports. Sports is known to be a really good thing, whether they're men or women. So tomboy, in the total definition, is actually just somebody that, it tends to be more athletic or whatever. And, I had one daughter who wore a tutu, and one daughter who, played softball and was kind of more of a studette. Fantastic. They were both girls. I embrace their femininity, but they're going to do it differently. They still are different when it comes to that. However, if you want to know if they're gay, it's not that they're tomboys. Maybe they throw a softball better than boys or whatever, but it's if they're talking about attraction to the opposite sex. To the same sex. So if they're talking about attraction to the same sex, that's more the tomboy thing. The old school view of girls who look a little bit, more like a guy, or guys who are really effeminate, that's really not as much, the issue anymore. The reason I say that's not the issue is because there's some pretty cool artists who are this way, and there are some amazing Olympic champion girls who, are a little bit more, they're a lot more buff than I would be. And they have heterosexual relationships. So it's more the attraction side. I wouldn't worry too much about, the tomboy side. And frankly, I wouldn't try to if you had a daughter who is wearing pants and cowboy boots and, is, better than the, pitcher on the high school pitching, team, embrace that. That's not about sexuality as much as it is, especially in today's world, because women have an opportunity to do more in the area of sports and things like that. And some women feel comfortable. Most of you women, I'm looking at some women who have, Levi's on, or, whatever.
They are more comfortable.
When I went to APU, they had just had, they didn't then, but they actually had, the reason I went there instead of Biola is because Biola had a dress code, and women had to wear skirts. Okay, and
I
not,
would have never made it.
Yeah, but the point being, that just changes. So, you women who are you tomboys because you have Levi's on? No, you're not. It's style.
Okay, remember last week, we need to take an emotional exhale. right?
I'm going to need to take an emotional
I know.
exile on my way home. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, this is great. This is so good. So we're going to dialogue for a couple minutes at our tables. You can still text in questions if you need it and if something pops up. But if you're sitting at a table alone, I'd encourage you to come and join another table. But here is your first question. Your first question is, why did you come tonight? I would also like you to now discuss one takeaway. What's one thing that stuck out to you that you're like, or oh my goodness, or I needed to hear that? All right, our last question for the last couple minutes of our time together. How are you going to practically take something you learned today and implement it with your kids and teens that you're involved with right now, like tomorrow? What is that one thing that you're going to do as a practical takeaway tomorrow? Well, family, we want to honor your time. We said we were going to go to 7:30, and it is 7:30. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having tough conversations and being willing to hold your breath for a second or two as we talked about all these things. I want to pray and just know that Jim will be around if there's some specific questions we don't want to inundate him for hours, but if you would like to chat with him, he will be here, okay? So let me pray. Oh, yes, thank you, Pastor Kim. And next week, don't forget next week. We have one more week, and it is going to be a panel, woohoo, with Pastor John and Pastor Kim, myself, and we'll have some other guests. And we're just going to talk about not parenting alone. Don't parent alone. I think if we've learned anything through COVID, being alone and isolated is not the healthiest space to be. So we want to be together, and that will be next week. So come out next week. So let me pray. Father, we thank you so much that you created our bodies intricately, and they are good. And you have created each one of our children with a divine purpose. And you made them just the way you wanted them. Would you help us as parents be bold in our conversations, in our connection with our kids, with having the conversations that may be uncomfortable for us because we didn't have them. But Lord, would you empower us to lead our children well and to love them right where they are, and keep pointing them to the hope in the future that is in you, Jesus. And we're so thankful that we can have these hard conversations and we can wrestle, and we can all not have the same viewpoint, and yet it is beautiful. And thank you for the body of Christ, because she is gorgeous. Lord, thanks for tonight. Amen.